Not only that, he laid his life down for those people and was raised from the dead and offered sinners a chance at redemption. Clearly, the character Harry Potter from the popular children's story written by J.K. Rowling has touched the hearts of many. Rowling has written her story with many complex themes and ideas. However, the most important of these themes is love. She displays love in many of its aspects and forms, but the most important, one significant way she does this is through the relationship between Harry and Lord Voldemort, the main antagonist of the story. In fact, Harry Potter is an archetypal Christ figure who displays biblical redemptive love in his thoughts, feelings, and actions towards Voldemort. In order to discuss this, we must first define biblical redemptive love and a Christ figure. Let's start with love. What is love? In 1 Corinthians 13, St. Paul gives us a very clear picture of love as it is in our day-to-day lives. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. Love does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. Miller J. Erickson's Concise Dictionary of Christian Theology defines love as concern for and action to promote the well-being of other people. And C.S. Lewis says in his book Before Love that love is a selfless action. It does not focus on one's own needs, but rather on the needs of other people. Given all of this, what is redemption? Erickson defines redemption as action to save people from punishment or from sin. And given this, it is clear that redemption is an expression of love. It is an extension of love. Redemption cannot be separated from love. Rather, it is necessarily a part of love. Therefore, biblical redemptive love is simply these two things taken together. It is concern for and action to promote the well-being of others by delivering them from punishment or from sin. Therefore, what is a Christ figure? A Christ figure is a literary device, more specifically a character archetype. A character archetype is a kind of pattern of character that can be found in literary traditions across time and across culture. It is considered to be so essential to the human experience that it is not limited by temporal bounds or by place. A Christ figure does not necessarily have to be exactly like Christ in any way. Rather, the author only need draw on a particular aspect of Christ in order to write the Christ figure. One such example can be found in C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy, specifically the second book, called Paralandra. The main character is a man named Ransom, and already there we see a parallel. Christ is referred to as the ransom for our sins. Ransom comes into contact with a man who has been possessed by a demon, and this conflict ultimately culminates in a physical fight, wherein the demon wounds Ransom on his heel, but he ultimately destroys it by crushing its head with a rock. This creates a parallel to the image of Christ we see in the book of Genesis, where God foretells to the state of Christ's ultimate victory. The assertion that Harry is a Christ figure does not come out of a vacuum. Rowling herself has said that she is a Christian, and that she has written this story with Christian themes in mind. And it is important to take these intentions into account when examining the story. At first glance, many people might think the relationship between Harry and Voldemort to be more simplistic than it actually is. Harry is the hero, Voldemort is the villain. Harry is the one who represents goodness and light, who has come to destroy Voldemort, and Voldemort is the evil that will be destroyed. This is not wholly inaccurate, but it is not the best reading either. The source of the conflict comes at a point when Harry was very, very young. Before he was born, it was prophesied that he would be the one who would eventually defeat Lord Voldemort. And when Lord Voldemort learned of this, he endeavored to kill him and his parents. Although he succeeded in murdering his parents, for some reason, when he went to kill Harry, the curse rebounded back upon himself, and he was temporarily defeated. If one were to read Harry Potter through a Christian lens, they might say that Voldemort is a Satan figure. And again, while this is not wholly inaccurate, it is not the best reading either. The reason for this is that Rowling spends the latter half of the story detailing Voldemort's backstory and the story of his childhood and his mother. She does this in order to humanize him for the reader, in order to show that he too is a human being, and he too experiences the things that we do. At the beginning of the story, he takes on an almost otherworldly quality in his evilness, and if she were intending him to be a Satan figure, she would have no need to dismantle this impression. I've mentioned that she spends the latter half of the story detailing Voldemort's backstory. Let's look at that more closely. In Harry's 6th year, Professor Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, spends time with him outside of the classroom to tell him about the story of Voldemort's childhood and his mother. He does this by showing him memories through the use of a magical object called a pensieve. It essentially works like a magical virtual reality system, but without the clunky goggles. Voldemort's mother was a woman named Vera. She was a pure-blood witch who lived in a hovel on the outskirts of a Muggle town with her father and brother. Muggle being non-magical person, and pure-blood witch being a magical woman whose ancestors were all also magical. She fell in love with this Muggle, but given that he had no regard for her whatsoever, she concocted a love potion in order to convince him to elope with her. However, when she became pregnant, she was overcome with guilt and ceased giving him these love potions. Naturally, he left her, and she was abandoned, impoverished, and alone, and forced to give birth to her son in a Muggle orphanage. She then died an hour later. Dumbledore then shows Harry his first memory of meeting her son, Tom Riddle, the young Lord Voldemort. Professor Dumbledore was going to give him his Hogwarts letter to tell him that he was a wizard. He first meets with the matron of the orphanage to discuss Tom and see how he has been getting on. The matron says that Tom has been wrapped up in many suspicious circumstances, and although they have never been able to pin any wrongdoing on him directly, she also says, well, Billy's rabbit didn't hang itself from the rafters, now did it? And when Dumbledore meets with Tom, Tom says much the same thing. He says he always knew that he was special, as he puts it, and that he can hurt the people who annoy him if he wants to. While Dumbledore and Harry are discussing the events that have transpired and Merope's death, Harry asks, rather indignantly, she wouldn't even say a lie for her own son? And Dumbledore responds, could you perhaps be feeling sympathy for Lord Voldemort? Harry immediately replies, no. Although he denies it, the fact that he asked this question is significant. He was, in fact, feeling sympathy for Lord Voldemort. He only denied it when Dumbledore pointed it out to him. Even at this moment, even so early on, he is still beginning to feel empathy for Lord Voldemort, even though this has perhaps not come to full fruition. Dumbledore gives him one more crucial piece of information. Voldemort has made what is called a Horcrux. It is a dark magical object, so dark most have never even heard of it. It is an object into which a person has placed part of their soul. And the process of creating one is so evil, Dumbledore will not describe it. However, he says that the final step is through cold-blooded murder, that this is the act which severs a person's soul. Horcruxes are quite rare because they are so evil, but in all other circumstances, a person has only created one. Voldemort has made 6. Harry and his two best friends, Ron and Hermione, decide that instead of going back to Hogwarts for their 7th year to continue their schooling, they will go and seek out the remaining Horcruxes so that they can destroy them, because so long as these Horcruxes are not destroyed, Voldemort cannot be defeated. Hermione does her best to research Horcruxes as much as she can, so that they are better equipped to destroy them. And while she is telling Ron and Harry about her findings, Ron asks incredulously, isn't there any way of putting yourself back together? And Hermione responds that there is. Remorse. If one were to truly feel remorse for the evil of what they had done, they could perhaps be saved. However, she follows this up with, I don't think Voldemort would do that, now do you? And Ron replies, no. However, the narrative also says that when Ron said no, he did this before Harry could answer. This is also a very subtle moment, but it is significant. Saying before Harry could answer implies that had he had the chance to answer, he would have said something different. Harry, might not have dismissed it as quickly as Ron and Hermione did. Instead, he absorbs the information and contemplates it. At the end of the story, the climax of the book, the last battle at Hogwarts, Harry learns one final crucial piece of information about Lord Voldemort. On the night his parents died, when Voldemort passed the killing curse that rebounded back upon himself, the force of the magic was so powerful and his soul was so fragile that it actually ripped a piece of his soul off unintentionally. And this piece latched itself onto Harry, the only living thing in close proximity. This means that Harry himself is an accidental Horcrux, and this also means that in order to destroy Voldemort, Harry himself must die. When he learns of this, Harry does not balk from the task at hand. He willingly accepts his fate and goes to meet Lord Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest so that he might be killed. And when Lord Voldemort kills him, Harry awakens in what looks to be King's Cross Station. It is not actually King's Cross Station. Rather, it is a bridge between our world and the afterlife. However, this is how it appears to Harry. And when he is there, Harry notices what looks to be a bloody, squalling infant. It is absolutely hideous, and Harry is disgusted by it. But he is also feeling pity for it. Rowling writes, "He was afraid of it. Small and fragile, and wounded though it was, he did not want to approach it. Nevertheless, he drew slowly nearer, ready to jump back at any moment. Soon, he stood near enough to touch it, yet he could not bring himself to do it. He felt like a coward. He ought to comfort it, but it repulsed him." In this moment, we see Harry torn between two instincts. His human instinct, repulsion, disgust, fear, and his heavenly instinct, his Christ-like instinct, the urge to love, to help, to comfort. While Harry is there, he also meets Professor Dumbledore, and they have a conversation about many of the things in the series. But during the course of this conversation, Harry's attention continually returns back to this infant. He is unable to truly force himself not to think of it. Although it is never said directly, this infant is intended to be Lord Voldemort. This infant represents the true state of Lord Voldemort's soul, and when Harry is met face to face with it, his urge is to comfort it, not to reject it. At the end of his conversation with Dumbledore gives Harry a choice. He can either go back to Hogwarts and to his life, or he can go forward to the afterlife in the next phase of his existence. Harry chooses to go back. And at the final moment, when Harry and Voldemort meet in the Great Hall for the very last time, most of their conflict is not actually a fight. It is a conversation. Again, they discuss many of the things that have happened in the series. But in the middle of their conversation, Harry urges Voldemort, "But before you try to kill me, I'd advise you to think about what you've done. Think and try for some remorse, Riddle. It's your one last chance. It's all you've got left. I've seen what you'll be otherwise. Be a man. Try. Try for some remorse." In this moment, Harry is remembering what Hermione told him at the beginning of the book. Could Voldemort have remorse, he would be able to be redeemed. And Harry does not simply think about this, he actively applies it. In this moment, at their final confrontation, Harry tries to save Voldemort. Voldemort is eventually defeated. Harry and Voldemort each fire one spell. Voldemort naturally fires the killing curse, but Harry tries to disarm him. The one curse Harry finds is the disarming spell, and that is all he tries to do. In this final moment, Harry does not destroy Voldemort. Voldemort falls because his own curse rebounded back upon himself, like it did the night Harry's parents died. Voldemort does not fall because Harry destroyed him. Voldemort falls because he chooses destruction himself. In this moment, we see the core of Harry's character. We see his love through his status as a Christ figure. Even when he is faced with his mortal enemy, one of the worst examples of humanity possible, his response is not hatred or cruelty or violence. It is empathy. It is pity. It is love. We see that morality is not a black and white affair. Voldemort, for all of his faults, even though he is evil, is also a human being. And even though he in no way deserves to be saved, Harry still offers him this chance. Harry responds in the way we are all called to respond as Christians, with empathy, with pity, with love to those who are fallen, even though they do not deserve it. As Professor Dumbledore says, do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living. And above all, pity those who live without love. Thank you.
Good job, and